Welcome to Larry the Alchemist, and welcome to another edition of Dudes Talkin' Metal. This is where we get together with you here at the Lair to discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. The dudes in the house with me today are Tony and Darren. We're going to be splicing Butch into this episode a little bit later. He couldn't join us live here for the recording. And this episode is kind of going to be a two-part thing here. We're going to have part one this week, part two next week, because they're kind of the same topic, but sort of flipped around. This week, we're going to be doing a great album with a bad cover. And next week, we're going to be doing a not so great album, but with a great album cover. So this week, uh, great album with a bad cover. Tony, why don't you kick us off on with this topic?
Okay, well, this one it was kind of tough because I found several good candidates for this, and but I decided to go with this one because there's not one bad album cover for this album, but two bad covers for this album. So I went with the debut by Fate's Warning, Night on Brocken. I'll take it out of the sleeve here so you can see it a little bit better. This looks like it came out of a children's coloring book and that some kid painted it with or filled it in with watercolors. And of course, I don't know what's going on here. We have a person. This looks like there's a witch on the edge of the, maybe she's on the edge of the mountain here. And here comes a religious dude, priest, maybe, going to go up and set her on fire. But you've got you've got people sitting down here. You've got like a wolf or a fox or something. I don't know what this is. Sorry, I got the ring lights kind of putting a glare on it, but yeah, it looks very, very elementary school painting or something. I don't know, but such a great album, such a great album. I mean, the debut album. This is back. It's Connecticut-based band. This is back when the band was really in there, influenced by bands like Iron Maiden for sure. It's got a little bit of Queensryche influence as well, which Queensryche came out about the same time. But these guys are going to be more proggy later on. But such a great record. I mean, Buried Alive, the Calling, Kiss of Death, the title track Night on Brocken, Damnation, Soldier Boy, just so many great songs on here. And like I said, so you got this album cover, and honestly, I don't know which came first. I actually have the biography of this band. I probably could have looked it up, but they also, here's another version, same album, maybe a little better, maybe a little more metal looking. It's the witch actually burning at the stake, but it's a pretty crappy painting. Maybe I mean, this isn't a Bob Ross we're talking here. This is it's like a crappy painting. And then they actually made a third cover, but the third cover is not so bad. The third, when it got reissued sometime in the late 80s, they put like a scene of space with a moon or a planet, and the well-known Fates Warning logo by then. But yeah, I know Darren plays in a band with Victor. And Victor was nice enough to sign these for me at the Maryland Doom Fest. I had the other guy sign them at the Prague Power Fest some years back. But I did read where, and Vic told me that day when he was signing this one, he said, "Yeah, we took the original painting outside and burned it." And there's a photo of them in the biography, the Fates Warning biography. There's a photo of them outside in the parking lot, like burning that painting.
Wow.
Which, some crazed fan would pay several $1,000s to own that, I'm sure. But they were just so heartbroken over it that they ended up just destroying it. But yeah, such a great album, Night on Brocken, just a crappy album cover.
I find those things. Go ahead, Darren.
I like that album cover. I mean, it's bad, but I mean, it's something about it that just reminds me of that point in time in the '80s when album covers sometimes I mean, if the album cover was bad, sometimes we would think the album is probably pretty good because based on the experience of other things that were crappy album cover art, but great albums. Like, oh, this album cover looks like it was done by a 3-year-old. It must be killer. And 9 times out of 10, it usually was. Yeah.
Now, if I had saw that in the store, I may have taken a chance on it, but my introduction to Fate's Warning was the Spectre Within, the second album, which has an awesome album cover.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I don't know if I had saw this originally, what I would have thought, but I have purchased some albums that's got crappy covers. I mean, one of the ones I almost threw in was Projects in the Jungle by Pantera. I love that record. I think it's a great
Yeah.
record. I mean, it's just for that era of music. But the album cover looks like it was done by the little brother that did the Fate's Warning cover. I mean, it's all
Yeah.
colored pencils. And but yeah, but I agree. There's a lot of stuff out there that has crappy covers that are good albums, especially in the metal world. You
I
know,
find it kind of charming, actually. Like when I started collecting vinyl in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and I was finding all these sort of obscure 80s metal bands. I found these covers to be like, they're sort of like so primitive and simple. They're like, it's like you're digging up some ancient artifact or something. It's very like the pictures from like medieval eras where the people looked all strange and everything because they just didn't have the tools and the technology, yet. So I do find it kind of endearing. But I agree with you. Like when I was collecting vinyl, I had gotten a couple other Fates Warning albums first. And then I saw that at a store and I was kind of like, huh? Like, I just remember looking at the cover like, whoa, like, it had things I liked on it, like wizards and things, all that kind of stuff, so but I just remember kind of looking at it like, okay, yeah, this looks pretty simple. So, something that mom would hang on the refrigerator. That's what it looks like,
right? And
Joey
going
brings it home
back
from
and
school and mom hangs it on the refrigerator.
just going through
Yeah.
my collection, I've got a bunch of records I picked up just because of the cover art so bad. I was like, I don't care what
Oh
this
yeah.
is, I'm buying it for the cover, and that doesn't make it a good record. I mean, but this is an excellent record.
Yeah, it's a great record. It's
Yeah.
a good one.
Yeah.
All right, Darren, what do you got for your? Did you find your pick there?
I Yeah, well, sort of. I had to change it up a little bit, and
Okay.
I've got two here, but I'm gonna go with this one,
Yeah.
Attacker, Battle at Helm's Deep.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Great one. Great
it's
one.
kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of a thing, and at a distance, it doesn't look too bad. But when you get closer and you look at it, it probably is just as bad, maybe even worse than the Fates Warning Night on Brocken. Especially our hero here, this guy, he's got like one eye is like lower than the other, and it's like a horrible cartoon thing. At a distance, it looks like, oh, this looks like really killer fantasy art, but when you get close to it, it's like, oh my God, this is awful. But the music is great. I mean, this is like a
Yeah.
classic album of like
Mm-hmm.
US power metal. I mean,
Excellent.
if you're into like US traditional power metal, whatever, and you don't have this album, you need to get it because it's got a pretty good reputation. And the pictures of the bands on the back and
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it
layout
looked
that
great.
was pretty typical of that point in time in the 80s. But if I was just looking at this, I mean, and like we said back in the day, sometimes we'd be kind of directed to the bad cover art, like, oh well, and it's probably a good album based on experience. But if I saw something like this today, I'd be like, oh my God, that's horrible.
Even the
But
logo. Look
the
at the
music is
logo.
killer.
How
I mean,
how
I
they
think
did it.
it's definitely an album that, like I said, if you're into traditional US metal, you don't have this in your collection, you definitely need to have it. But the album cover is horrible. So this is my pick. Attacker, Battle at Helm's Deep.
Good pick.
That's a
Good
great
pick.
record. I originally bought that on
Mm.
cassette, like out of the discount bin, and I looked at the cover. It was on Metal Blade. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be good." It was like $2. So I bought it. But when it got reissued, I think Sentinel Steel did on CD. They put the original cover art, but then they did new cover art for it. I'm
Yeah,
trying
I
to see
saw
Yeah.
it.
that.
Yeah, which is more like a 3D. I think it's actually the I believe the Hildenbrandt brothers that did the model.
Hildebrand,
I think
yeah.
I think they may have done this new cover. I'm not really sure. I know they did a bunch of stuff for Sentinel
It looks like a
Steel.
Hildebrand cover, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Cover art, yeah, it does. Hildenbrandt brothers did the reissue of it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well,
And
for my
technically that's better, but I mean, technically that's a better, it's better art, but it kind of kills the mystique. It's like
yeah,
when I think of that album, I mean, the same thing with the Fates Warning Night on Brock, and I know there's like three different album covers, but I always think of that first one
yeah,
with
Mm-hmm.
that wizard with the stick and the hat.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
it's burned in my brain whenever I think of Night on Brock and I think of that album cover. And likewise with Attacker, Battle at Helm's Deep, it's always that cover and that guy with the wonky eye
yeah,
battling the dragon or whatever. It's kind of like it's just a match
yeah.
for better for worse. It's a match,
And it's sort
So
of a thing from that era where bands, these bands on small labels, they didn't have the budgets for big album covers. So it's sort of something that I think about when I think about these underground 80s bands. I think about album covers that are kind of like that, a little very simple. And but again, it's sort of endearing and charming, and it's sort of a
yeah,
snapshot of a point in time because the people that was listening to a lot of this stuff were 12 and 13-year-old kids that were playing Dungeons and Dragons. And you see this even as an adult. And when I started collecting records, I was like, wizard. If there was a dragon, a wizard, an axe, a sword on any cover, I'm getting this. That's I wouldn't
sure,
even think twice
For
about it,
sure.
especially back then when I was paying like $5, $6 for these records. I was just like, it's got an axe on the cover, I'm buying it. So all right,
yeah.
well, my pick. So your guys' picks were more underground bands, and so that's probably their excuse. They just had no budget. This band was very successful at this point. They certainly had a budget, and they used a company, a very reputable, good company for the cover, and it's UFO Strangers in the Night. I honestly never knew that this was a Hypnosis cover. Hypnosis, for those people who don't know, is a art company that did album covers for tons of bands back in the 70s, most notably like Pink Floyd. They did, I think they might have done most of at least all the Schenker UFO albums up to this point. They have a
Yep.
very unique style of art, this kind of photographs, but they do these tricks with the photos and coloring them in and all kinds of stuff. Great love. So many Hypnosis album covers are just legendary. And then you get this. This is also the era of the live album, the double live album. And think about how many bands had great live album covers. Kiss, Alive, Alive 2, Judas Priest, Unleashed in the East. Just so many great live album covers from back. Ted Nugent, Double Live Gonzo, Live and Dangerous Thin Lizzy. And the color
Yeah, totally.
scheme is bizarre, sort of the red, green, blue, the dots. It's a little hard to see in the picture, but there's all these sort of like pixelated dot.
Newsprint.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. Like,
newsprint. And the people, I think what's most unsettling about it is the people on the cover. I'm not sure if these are supposed to be fans at the show. I mean, they're dudes with collars on and short hair. They look like they're angry, like they're screaming, or maybe they're guys working on the stock market floor, those guys that scream on the floor. I mean, it's just terrible. And it's such a shame because this is, uh, some people say this is the greatest live album of all time, and I wouldn't argue with somebody that had that opinion. This is definitely like one of the
One of them
top
for
five.
sure.
Yeah, it's definitely right up there as one
absolutely.
of the best live albums of all time. Definitely one of the best live albums of the 70s. So on top of the bad cover, you kind of can't even see the name here. It's like really small, and it just,
Yeah.
strange. It's just like lost in the cover. It's hard to read the lettering on the back. And again, this era, live albums, you open them up and you got all these great live shots. Well, you got this sort of picture of the band here, kind of doing the same thing with their mouths open. So that's not so terrible. But what really always upset me was these live shots. They're like
Oh, they're tiny. Yeah.
so tiny. And
Mhm.
you get a live record and you want to see those big, cool live shots, and it's so disappointing. This is just, in my opinion, a terrible cover. It's shocking because again, it's Hypnosis, and they're such a well-known up until this morning, I just assumed that this was somebody else that did this album cover. And when I looked it up, I was like, oh my gosh, this is Hypnosis. Like, it doesn't even fit the Hypnosis style. Like, Hypnosis, no heavy petting and force it and stuff. They always did those things where it was like a picture, but they would cut in different things to make it look really strange and weird and like what's going on. And the titles usually sort of played into it. Black Sabbath's Never Say Die, Rainbow's Difficult to Cure, so it's sort of tied in with the cover. And I mean, I should have read it, see if I could have found the backstory on this cover. I wouldn't be surprised if this was like the company was ready to go out of business or they were fighting inside the company and they gave this to an intern and an intern just threw this together. But it's really weird. It's really disappointing and it's such a shame because this is just such a legendary live album.
The colors do are kind of eye catching though. If you saw it, you're going to go, "What is this?" But it
Yeah,
just does not look like UFO. Doesn't look like the hypnosis stuff. One of my favorite hypnosis UFO records is Faucet. You
Yeah.
and you have a faucet, which they call it the
Yeah.
faucet over there. On
Yeah.
it. It's cool. I saw a friend of mine went to Eddie Trunk's 40th anniversary party that he did, and had some bands playing it. That the show pass, like the backstage pass for the bands working and stuff, was a takeoff of that cover, but it was Eddie's face in place of the other guy, and had the colors and stuff.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty
because he
funny.
loves UFO so much.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. All right. Well, Butch couldn't join us this week, so I'm gonna edit Butch in right here. Now, just a little warning. We've got a hurricane bearing down on Florida. I'm supposed to Zoom with Butch tomorrow morning to get his picks just in case he doesn't show up here. That's the reason why maybe my internet might not be working tomorrow morning. So hopefully, here's Butch.
All right. So, my pick for a great album but a terrible cover is this bad boy right here. 1983's Thin Lizzy Thunder and Lightning, what would prove to be their final record. Um, this is a killer record, really. I mean, it's probably the most like heavy metal thing that they did. Um, Great songs. Title track Thunder and Lightning. The Sun Goes Down is awesome. One of the moodiest, like coolest songs they ever did. Holy War is great. Cold Sweat's a banger. The total classic. Um, Baby Please Don't Go. Like every song on here is at least really good. And most, about half of them are great. I think it's one of the. I think after Black Rose, I think this is one of the better records they did. I think it's slightly better than Chinatown for sure, and Renegade's growing on me. But this is like it's just a really good record. But I mean, this cover is like it's just like we got classic album covers from them from Jim Fitzpatrick over the years. They had a couple Duffer covers in their catalog. The cover for Fighting isn't neither cover for Fighting is great. Um, and Shades of Blue Orphanage not great. It seems like anytime they went away from Jim, uh, what they came up with was not fantastic. Bad Reputation aside, which I kind of like that cover, but I know some people don't. I just think it looks kind of like they didn't really put a hell of a lot of thought into it. You got your metal fist and just this barren landscape and the guitar. It's just cheesy to me. I think for a band that had classic, classy album covers overall, this is just a bad piece of art that I think they should have gone to Jim for. No doubt he would have come up with something better. Even the back covers, just like here's that. Look how stupid that
Yeah.
looks with the lightning on the guitar. Like if you're gonna do this, like have really great painting of some kind, maybe. But and then this like little live shot. I don't know. This just doesn't work for me as a cover. I've seen way worse, but in terms of like great record with a bad cover, um, this is a good representative of that idea. I think killer record though. I would recommend it to everyone. Don't worry about the cover. You can't listen to the cover anyway.
All right. Hopefully that was Butch there with his pick. All right. So there you go. There's our picks for great album, bad cover. I think we could do another episode of this because there's definitely other ones out there. I have a few in mind from the 80s sort of underground metal bands that I could have done. So maybe we'll do this again because this is pretty fun. Make sure you check in for the episode after this that we're going to do next week, which is great cover bad album. All right. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.